My childhood buddy's a real heartthrob. He's stolen my girlfriend 8 times. This time he's got his eyes on Monica, the CEO, and he managed to win her over. Finally, I can enjoy some normal dating time with my girl while he's busy with Monica. But just as I'm about to marry my girlfriend, he swoops in again and takes her away. Monica finds out too. To be specific, Monica and I caught each other's partners in the act. We stood outside, listening to them inside. Monica looked awkward. She's never been in such an embarrassing situation before. Socially anyway. I said to her, "So, you want to get back at them? How about you give me a shot?" My buddy Frank, well, he's a real looker. Walking down the street, heads turn his way all the time. He's used to it now, and thinks there's no woman who can truly challenge him anymore. One day, we were heading home after a meal and ran into my old school crush, Monica. Monica, standing at 5 feet 9 inches with an elegant and delicate face, was by her luxury car in front of a fancy store, looking like she was in a rom-com. Somehow, I ended up saying hi to her, and she nodded back. Frank's interest was piqued immediately, and once we got home, he wouldn't stop asking about her. "You knew her all along and never introduced us? I haven't met someone like that in forever. She's my type, an ice queen." Slouched on the couch, scrolling through my phone, I mumbled without looking up. I didn't think she'd remember me. Back in school, she was the top beauty. Now she's a tech elite, a perfect 10 all around. If you land her, half the guys on the street will envy you. What made you think she could be friends with the likes of me? Frank squeezed next to me and grumbled, "You were her classmate. Didn't you have a crush on her?" I thought for a moment, gave him a once-over and said, "A girl like her needs a stud like you." In school, I could have tried my hardest, and she still wouldn't have given me the time of day. I'm just a regular guy, admiring high-quality folks like you from afar. Among average folks, I might pass for decent looking, but next to Frank, I vanish. Monica's always got charming men like Frank around her. My comment left Frank pretty chuffed. With a smirk, he fixed his hair in the mirror. "Yeah, she's there to be conquered by me. It'll be a tough challenge, but I'm sure he'll succeed. No woman's ever out of bounds for Frank. I've learned this over the decade I've known him. To Frank, there are only women he likes and doesn't like. And if he likes you, you're his." This has included several of my girlfriends. They wouldn't normally catch Frank's eye, but with a beckon, they'd fall for him, only to be dumped within a week. He'd say, "They didn't really love you if they fell for me that easily. I'm doing you a favor by sorting them out." The next day, Frank was persistent, dragging me along to find Monica. Right now, Monica's still the single CEO of a tech company and has wealthy suitors vying for her attention. She was probably waiting for one at the luxury store yesterday, coincidentally, where I've been interviewing for her company and got the scoop from staff about their young, wealthy boss. Curious how Frank planned to win over this seemingly unattainable woman, I got my chance. There was a party at Monica's company. Their PR invited me and I got Frank a ticket too. Frank walked into the party looking sharp in a well-fitted suit, turning everyone's heads. He was meticulously styled, every inch of him exuding an intoxicating charm that made the other men around Monica fade away. Quite smoothly, he breaks the ice with Monica, who, caught off guard, offered her hand. Even the queen of the corporate jungle couldn't resist such a lure. Female colleagues around me were whispering, wondering who he was. Monica, who rarely engages with anyone, was now chatting away. There was a difference between an ordinary guy and a heartthrob like Frank, evident to all at the party. Half a month later, Frank came back one morning, radiating triumph. I handed him 2 eggs. "Congrats." He usually nitpicked about the oil in my eggs to stay fit, but today he was in too good a mood to care, enjoying them thoroughly. The marks on his neck caught my attention, though. "I did it again," he announced proudly. I nodded. "Congrats. I have something to tell you." After a moment, I said, "I'm seeing someone." Frank frowned. "When did this happen? We live under the same roof, best buds, and you're just now telling me? Afraid I'll steal her too?" Quickly shook my head. No. Frank rolled his eyes, nibbling on his breakfast. "Relax, I have Monica now. I'm not interested in anyone else for a while." She's the highest quality woman I've met in years. Frank is just too handsome for his own good. All the guys around him seem to fade into the background, except for me. Sure, he steals my girlfriends, but he treats me pretty well otherwise. Every time I get in a relationship, he'd buy me luxury stuff and never bring women back to our place. Honestly, him stealing my girlfriends kinda helped me focus and become top-notch at what I do. The thing is, having this ridiculously good-looking guy around meant I was too scared to date anyone, until I met Helen. She's a med school grad working at a top hospital. Not exactly a knockout, but she ticks all the boxes for a perfect marriage prospect. The best part? She seems genuine and shares my ideas about marriage. So I made sure we hit it off. But I never wanted her to meet Frank. None of my exes ever resisted his charm. But things felt different now. With Monica in the picture, I figured Frank wouldn't be interested in Helen. When Helen visited, Frank barely glanced at her, just a quick look. Once she left, he casually remarked, "You did good this time, much better than before." If it weren't for Monica, I might have been interested. I was nervous. You're not into her, right? Frank didn't even look up. Nah, just a doctor. Why would I look her way when I've got a CEO? I underestimated Frank, though. Again. One day, after wrapping up a work meeting with Monica's company, Monica herself approached me. The first time she'd ever initiated a conversation with me. With a serious look, she asked, "Do you know what Frank's been up to lately?" I shook my head truthfully. "No clue. He said he had plans with you today and left early." Monica frowned. "We didn't have plans. So where is he? As his close friend, you must know. You need to take me to him." Seeing she meant business, she made an offer. "Help me out, and I'll make sure your piece isn't only on me but also includes interviews with up-and-coming tech CEOs in town. Only for you, exclusive access." With a tempting offer like that, I couldn't resist. I glanced at Monica and set my decision in stone. If she wants to find out what's under the surface, it's not my fault, right? He mentioned the desserts at M Hotel were amazing. Maybe he's there? I suggested. Monica looked even more steely-eyed. She likely never got any invites from Frank for M Hotel suites. The company's elsewhere, and I knew who. I hopped into Monica's Lux ride, reached the hotel, and dropped Frank's ID at the front desk. Thanks to Monica's connections, getting to his room was a breeze. Outside the room, we heard noises of passion. The woman's voice, high and excited, egging on Frank's sharper responses. "Take it easy, I can't handle more," Frank chuckled. "Do you get this with her? You kidding? You're unmatched. She's dead fish in bed. But you'll still marry her. Can't believe you'd say that." Monica and I listened, horrified. Monica was seething. Her face was red with anger, ready to burst in and confront him. But before she could, I pulled her aside gently, answering lowly, "Turns out the guy in there's my boyfriend." Monica instantly calmed, glancing at me with newfound sympathy. We didn't enter. Whatever was behind that door, we weren't ready to face it. We sat in the hotel's restaurant wordlessly. From Monica's ice-cold expression, I could see she had genuinely liked Frank. Her phone case, no doubt from him, clashed with her power suit vibes. She didn't know, Frank liked giving phone cases to whom he deemed high caliber with childish undertones to claim his territory. I broke the silence. "That's my girlfriend in there. Frank saw her once. We were planning to get married soon. Invites are ready, venues booked, parents met, new home set up." Monica, quiet till now, looked up at me. "You've had it worse than I have," she admitted. My eyes stung, struggling against the bitterness. I didn't see it coming. As two betrayed people sitting together, Monica, the fierce CEO, softened a bit. "You've dodged a bullet. It's better knowing now before the wedding than finding out later." Monica's first betrayal pulled her into passionate defenses. I, on the other hand, had been cheated on enough to sense Helen's subtle change toward Frank without them even meeting again. I slumped over the table, looking desperate, and said, "We've known each other for 7 or 8 years. Every time she steals my boyfriend. But this time is different. We're about to get married. I thought after we got married and moved out, I'd never face this again. I was so naive. I thought after she started dating you, she'd stop." I sneaked a glance at Monica, Her face turned green, like she'd swallowed a fly. We had ordered some desserts when we first got to the restaurant, but Monica didn't take a single bite. She seems disgusted, having fallen for a jerk and caught a stranger cheating with her partner. A taste worse than swallowing a fly. This is quite an experience, even for a CEO like her. With tears in my eyes, I looked up at Monica. Monica, I have a small request. Can you not expose this right away? I need time to think. Helen and I have some financial dealings, and I don't want to walk away with nothing. Monica agreed but warned, not too long. I don't want to be caught in a scandal. I promised I'd wrap things up fast. We exchanged contacts. It was the first time I got her number in 10 years of knowing her. I was so excited I didn't sleep a wink that night. I quickly returned the dowry Helen gave me and the keys to our new place. I briefly explained to her parents that there wouldn't be a wedding and took back the bride price. Her folks were decent people, continually apologizing for Helen's actions, making me a bit embarrassed. Fortunately, I hadn't sent out the invites, so I didn't have to explain to friends why there'd be no wedding. Helen found out, but, being the classy person she is, didn't make a fuss. She asked if there was no way to fix her mistake. I coldly replied, no. Then I blocked all her contacts in one swift motion, shocking everyone. Helen was amazed at my efficiency. She looked blankly at me as I calmly wrapped things up. Did you never love me? Why do I feel like you're a stranger now? I hated losing control to someone else. Helen, I told her, you cheated first. If you hadn't, our invites would have been sent out by now. Helen looked regretful and lost. Less than a week later, I texted Monica. I've sorted everything out. Mission accomplished. Monica replied with an okay. After waiting a bit, I sent another message. Don't you want to get back at him? Monica didn't reply for a long time. The chat showed she was typing, but no message came through. I thought she wasn't ready to trust me or that my offer wasn't tempting enough. I knew she'd break up with Frank soon. A proud person like her couldn't tolerate a cheating partner. Frank used to occasionally show up at Monica's office. It's been a week since anyone's seen him there. Monica kept her promise, and I managed to interview several tech bigwigs in M-City. My boss was pleased, and even the company was surprised by my results. How did you manage to get them? They asked. I remember they only do interviews with state media, and they're rarely in M-City. I said, I got some help from paparazzi and classmates working at their companies. Whenever they're in M-City, I'd visit. It was all a tall tale. With Monica's connections, getting a half hour with those execs was easy. My colleagues and bosses were impressed by my dedication. I bagged a big chunk of the quarterly bonus and was the shoe-in for this year's promotion. As for own life, that too had its moments. After breaking up with Monica, Frank was down for a while. It was his first time being dumped, and it was brutal. Before, he meddled in others' relationships, and even when caught, women couldn't let him go. It was always messy, and he was the one to end things, never the other way around. This bruised his ego. He couldn't fathom why, and tried multiple times to reach Monica, only to be turned away. He grew frustrated. Things were going great between us. What's she thinking? Was she just using me? This is the first time I've seen you so down. Guess even the handsome ones get heartbroken. Frank snorted and started scheming. I'll make sure she knows there's a price for rejecting me. While I was working at my computer, I deliberately pulled up a photo of a woman. Predictably, Frank came over. What? Is that your interview target? The screen showed Annie, a rich kid, with looks and body rivaling Monica's. Both were renowned tech moguls running competing companies and looking like celebrities often compared to each other. But while Monica worked her way up, founding successful startups, Annie was the classic trust fund kid, perched at the top. I nodded. We've tried everything. Annie, raised abroad, doesn't care for the domestic scene. She's much harder to get than Monica, especially since their companies are rivals. We've interviewed Monica, so they're suspicious of us. Frank squinted his eyes. I'll help. That's easy. I chuckled. Give it your best shot. Frank thought I was just worried about my work and went off plotting his strategy. Frank somehow scored big, even charming the elusive Annie. Returning with gifts from her, he gave me a smug look. Don't worry. Once she's head over heels, I'll set up the interview. We're best pals after all. But the interview never came. Instead, the romance was publicized. Annie and Frank's relationship was known everywhere overnight. Annie has always been someone who loves the limelight, often attending all kinds of celebrity and charity events. She even made it to the news holding Frank's arm, with major media reporting Frank as Annie's new boyfriend. There were rumors about Frank and Monica before, and even though they kept things low-key, the paparazzi managed to snap pictures of them together. This love triangle just makes everything so much more complicated. Oh my gosh! Frank is Annie's boyfriend, and he's also Monica's boyfriend. So does that mean Annie is Monica's girlfriend too? Frank's quite the player, isn't he? He's really good at playing around with these women. He's so handsome, though. Could I have his looks in my next life? With that face and body, who wouldn't fall for him? The love and drama between these three could fill a book. It's like Annie is clearly provoking Monica. When I went to Monica's company again, Monica came to me herself. She looked like she was about to lose it. Frank, what's wrong with him? Will he die without women for a day? I looked innocently at Monica. That's just how he is. Everyone's talking about our love triangle with Frank and Annie. What should we do now? But maybe it's not all bad. Monica's company is trending every day. They aren't even looking at my company or products, but are fixated on my sexual orientation and this love triangle. I'm not like Annie, flitting around like a social butterfly. I don't need this. It's just trouble for my company. A good company doesn't need its CEO to be in tabloid gossip. Monica let out a sigh after venting. You said before that Frank stole all your girlfriends? I whispered, yeah. The last one I already told. Cheating is the worst, and I don't want to see her again. Monica chuckled. Jack, it was you who brought Frank to me, right? You owe me for this. And what's better at breaking rumors than having a boyfriend? I said nervously, why are you looking at me, though? You have so many wealthy and good-looking guys around you. I'm just average. How can I stand beside you, Monica? I'm just an ordinary guy. After catching someone cheating at a hotel with you last time, I find everyone disgusting. It's like they all have some ulterior motive. I didn't sleep well for days, probably you too, right? We have battle camaraderie now, that partner in crime trust. Monica set a few ground rules in our relationship. Be honest, no cheating, no deception. Hesitantly, I signed the agreement. Monica smiled with satisfaction. After she left, I smiled too. Who would have thought? Huh? You were always my goal. If not for Frank, would you have even looked at me twice? With Frank and Annie dating, he's even more in his element. Attending events, basking in the spotlight. He threw my former fiancée, Helen, out the window. She even tried to get back together on her knees, saying she was out of her mind. But I wasn't the least bit sympathetic. I looked at the supposed fitting marriage candidate. His usefulness was over, just another piece in the plan. We had no feelings, so how could there be forgiveness? Even Annie, I specifically set her up for Frank. When I was a reporter, I knew Monica and Annie were rivals. Back when Monica was starting her business, Annie snatched away investments and resources. Annie even dropped a harsh message. Don't mess with me. Every major investor in this city is connected to me. You're just a fool in a car crash. Monica was defiant, but reality made her hit wall after wall. No major investors wanted her company, except one private investor. On her entrepreneurial journey, Annie kept tripping her up until at some point Annie went abroad, and things got a bit better. If anything could make Monica lose her mind, it had to be Annie. And Frank, loving challenges, would surely be drawn to someone like Annie. He's like a butterfly floating through the flowers, without a care in the world. She's vibrant, beautiful, always in the news, with a magnetism that draws people in. How could Frank not be captivated by her? Since getting with Monica, my career has taken off. Whenever she gives the nod, I get the first-hand intel I want. In return, I skewed the narrative against Annie a little bit. But really, when it's a rich kid versus a regular guy, people naturally sympathize with their own. We crafted a relatable image for Monica, showed she overcame hardships without luck, purely on her own skills. Meanwhile, Annie's scandals surfaced. Switching boyfriends like clothes, Rumors of abortions and cheating filled her youth. Despite a lack of concrete evidence, these trust fund kids are pros at burying their dirty past. Just a whiff of rumor can set the internet sleuths wild. Who knew gossip could get this far? Could Annie even be serious about Frank? It's gross, isn't it? Does having money mean you can treat people however you like? Could she actually be a criminal? How could a rich kid be sincere in love? Maybe it's just to spite Monica. Weren't they always at odds? But Monica, she's truly amazing. Built everything from scratch, no help, that's inspirational. Once I have money, I'm going to support Monica's products. Frank doesn't care. Annie's past doesn't matter. He's hardly one to judge. Let people talk. He's been the center of gossip his whole life. In his world, no one talks about him, and that's worse than being dead. As for Monica, I bet she can tell this is my handiwork. I know having a common enemy isn't enough in a relationship. You also need to be valuable in her eyes. Otherwise, what's the difference between you and a pet cat or dog? Finally, Monica took me to a public event, a charity gala. Wrapped in the trappings of wealth, even an average guy like me got to look quite polished. When Frank walked over with Annie on his arm, his smile froze for a moment. Monica looked at them with interest. Oh, you like wearing other people's old shoes? That's just how she and Annie are. They're always sharp with each other, always at odds. Frank hugged Annie tighter and gave her a loving look. Pretty things belong to those with power. Monica, ever heard of free love? The two were all snuggled up, showing off their closeness. Monica glanced at Frank. Couldn't believe she was ever so obsessed with him. She quietly said to me, I can't even look at him now without feeling sick. I handed her a tissue. Don't throw up. There are a lot of reporters around. I stepped forward and flashed a smile at Annie. Annie, with so many reporters here, you wouldn't mind another interview, right? Here's my press pass. Annie wasn't thrilled. She probably hates journalists more than anything. With all the bad press lately, you're probably the one blackening my name. Feigning surprise, I covered my mouth. Annie, how could you say such a thing? You never gave us an interview, so we had to gather information ourselves. There are so many gossip sites. How do you know it's us? Gotta watch what you say, or it's slander. Our company sends legal notices all the time. Annie looked taken aback, surrounded by flowers, yet pricked by a thorn. Monica, you like this kind of guy? She sized up my body, then exaggeratedly gestured at my face. Disappointing. Monica's grip on my hand tightened. I'm definitely different from you. Frank's charming face showed a hint of frustration and discontent. For the first time, I'd taken something from him. Back home that night, Frank was already sitting on the couch. Well, Jack, you did it. When did you hook up with Monica? Wasn't there that girl Helen? Isn't she your fiancée? I sat across from Frank, waving my hand through the air to dissipate the unpleasant perfume scent. She stopped being my fiancée the moment she cheated. Frank squinted. So you knew all along? Huh? No wonder. So was it Monica who told you? Frank finally figured out what was off, like solving a puzzle that had stumped him. Holding my glass of water, my fingers stiffened without a response. Were you gonna throw water at me, Jack? Is it that serious? I burst out. That was my fiancée. We were getting married next month. You've got a better girlfriend now. Why are you after mine? Frank relaxed, fiddling with his fingers, unfazed. Isn't there a thrill in crossing the line? Plus, consider it screening. Blame me for her taking the bait so easily? And what about you turning the tables on me? Aren't you worried I'll try something with Monica again? I spoke deliberately. This is the 8th time, Frank, the 8th time you've taken my girlfriend. You think you're gonna succeed the 9th time? I lunged forward, catching him off guard, and pinned him to the sofa. Grabbing his throat, a red mark instantly appeared on his pale neck. Don't think I don't know about your seduction system, I growled, living off charming women. You never worked a day after graduation, eating at fancy restaurants, living in 5-star hotels, spending a fortune every year just to maintain your looks. Even if women were all foolish, it wouldn't be doable without your system. Frank looked at me with terror, instinctively pulling back. How do you know? I know because Frank and I have been living under the same roof since we graduated. If I pay attention, I can hear him talking with his system, choosing women to charm. It was even the system's idea. You've charmed all the quality women around you? Why not try your roommate's girlfriend? It's a challenge and the reward points are high. So he did. I tested it several times experimentally. It didn't matter what kind of woman, he'd always succeed. So I know Frank's got a seductive system. Helen, Monica, Annie, they'll all fall for it. The tougher the woman, the more points he scores. What's more, I know his system has a glitch. It only makes women fall head over heels temporarily, but the charm doesn't last. Some of my exes even came back to me after being hurt by Frank, regretting leaving, completely forgetting how infatuated they were before. This was all documented in my experiments. Women might fall for him, but few would stick around forever. His scene was always devoid of guy friends from the moment he started completing these tasks. I'm the only one willing to be his friend. Even back then, my friends warned, watch out for Frank. He'll take anything. But I didn't care. Those ordinary girls, they can have them. They didn't matter much to me. In my plan, Frank is key. Without him, I couldn't execute my strategy. Monica, she's the one I've secretly loved for years. I've been secretly watching her ever since she became a big deal at school. She always stood out with confidence and uniqueness among all those eyes on her. But she never really looked at me. I was too ordinary, not top of the class, not exceptionally good looking. Even later at work, when I first interviewed her, I deliberately brought up school days. Monica couldn't even recall someone like me from back then. She just casually said, what a coincidence. I let go of Frank's neck, and his face finally regained a bit of color. But what's the point? Telling others? They wouldn't believe you. They'd just say you read too many novels. Can you even get me arrested? Frank, you're such a jerk. Frank was defiant. You already knew that, didn't you? Your friends haven't been shy about bad-mouthing me to you. Why suddenly acting all high and mighty now? I headed to the bedroom to rest, leaving Frank alone in the living room. The bait set, just waiting to reel it in tomorrow. The next morning, I woke up to see Frank packing up to move out. You leaving? I rubbed my bleary eyes. Frank's busy boxing up stuff in the living room. Looks like there's no mending things between us. Since you broke the ice, we're better off not seeing each other again. Then remember to call a cleaning service to tidy up. This is my parents' house after all. Look at how you've left it messy for years. Jack! Frank stamped his feet in anger, dropped a wad of cash, and walked out. Frank and I cut ties completely and even unfriended each other. With nowhere to go, Frank ended up at Annie's place, becoming her new boy toy. Being a boy toy isn't easy though. Not even 3 months in, Annie was already all over the news overseas with her new influencer boyfriend. Pictures of a heartbroken Frank getting drunk at the bar hit the headlines too. Old flames can't beat new ones. Frank tried several times to get an explanation from Annie but got nowhere. Eventually, he moved out of her villa. On a rainy day, I went to pick him up with an umbrella. It was the first time I'd seen Frank so down, completely soaked and dragging a big suitcase, looking really pitiful. I handed him the keys to my place. I haven't cleared your stuff out. If you need a place to stay, you can come back. Frank was tearful. Jack, you're actually willing to take me back? You don't know, Annie is just a terrible woman. I patted his head and stuffed him into a cab. Don't worry, she won't get off that easy. Why would Annie give up a whole garden for Frank? Even if the passion was strong at first, outside flowers are always more tempting. And Frank, he's not one to just take it. Monica's indifference already made him mad enough. How could he let Annie cheat on him? Frank was moved to tears by what I did. I'm sorry, Jack. I've really messed up. I should never have taken your woman. It's fine, we'll get back at her together. You lived in her house long enough, you must have picked up something, right? No rush. Take a breather first and tell me later. Frank didn't know that without him. How could I receive such a big gift? 3 days after Frank moved out of Annie's villa, I reported a scandal about her company. Glitzy on the outside, it's been losing money for a while. Can't go public. Is it a lack of ability? Or a financial crisis? Relying on being a rich kid to run a company, spending all day partying, can you really create a good product? I even included details of Annie's recent 3-month itinerary. She didn't even show up to her company's product launch, just accompanying her beauties, managing several pretty boys 24/7. Netizens commented, "She's a time management master, handling so many influencers in a day? If you're going to be a rich kid, just be a rich kid. Why pretend to be an entrepreneur when you're not dedicated to any product?" Right, I bought their electronics before, poor quality, they kept breaking down, and customer service wouldn't respond. This marketing account really dares to report such things? Aren't they afraid of retaliation? The internet blew up, and I couldn't help but feel thrilled reading these comments. I'm not afraid of Annie's revenge. The more she comes at me, the stronger my position in Monica's mind becomes. My boss was delighted with the buzz. Seems like Jack is on a roll this year. No worries for our annual performance. Being rivals, Monica's public image improved and company stock soared. She started inviting me out more, and we had more to talk about. One night, while Monica was treating me to dinner, several women tried kidnapping me, but Monica's bodyguards stopped them. I was scared to death. Shaking in her arms, I said, "It must be Annie. She threatened to give me trouble before." Monica immediately announced our engagement to protect me. During our time together, she found out that I'm low-key, competent at work, and most importantly, have no interest in other women. Like her, I'm fully committed to work. Like her, I've suffered betrayal from those closest to me. Like her, I've been bullied by Annie using her power. With so much in common, who cares if we don't match in status or looks? Monica and I quickly became inseparable. On our wedding night, Monica held me. "Why didn't I see before how amazing you are?" Of course, since having me, the group stock has risen steadily, and her image keeps getting better. Even though she's had many men around, I believe I'm unique to her. She buried her head into my neck. "Jack, you're really my lucky star." I nuzzled into her embrace. This is destiny brought to us by the heavens. Yes, it's heaven-sent destiny. In the darkness, I wrapped my arms around her waist. The beautiful woman was right within reach. Thinking back on the plan I'd set in motion, I couldn't help but laugh quietly to myself. After all this time, I finally have you, Monica.